Thanks for tuning in to German Chocolate Life of a Mixed Girl in the series The Expert That I Know. And I am always excited. So yes, I'm excited today to have my friend, Dr. Jared Warren here. He is a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Florida. And he is originally from Jersey. So my Jersey boy in town. Hey, Jared.
How's it going, Jessica? Good to be here.
Yay, I'm so glad you had time and that you were also excited to be here and do this. So Jared, I'm calling him Jared and not Dr. Warren because he's obviously my friend. Jared and I work at the same psychology clinic here in Florida in our little town. We actually don't live too far from each other either. We were debating to do this in the same room even. Jared was like, what time should I come over? I was like, oh, no, you don't have to. We'll do it this way. It'll be easy.
The convenience.
Yeah. But next time we'll do one on the sofa. And it's really cool because when I started there a little over a year ago, Jared was a resident psychologist at the place. I don't know if you can hear it. My headphones decided to just play some music. But so I was a resident psychologist. And when I started, was training me actually. So we were both working with the neuropsychologist that I currently work with and sharing patients. And I learned all my tricks of the trades and best practices from Jared. Thank you.
Not a problem. And hopefully we both do a good job.
I think so. I think we are very much appreciated. And you stay busy because it is stressful times, hard times, in all of the aspects and ways that we can think of worldwide, especially since the pandemic and everything. So that might explain why you're extra busy, because what is your expertise? What do you do on a daily basis?
Yes, so currently, well, I do a little bit of everything. Currently, it's primarily therapy, psychotherapy, and I found that the field in general as a whole, since the pandemic, it's just increased so much. People are isolating more. People are just down more. They're not going out. They're not trying new things as much. And, as you might know, the more you're isolated, the more you're not engaging with the environment or other people, the more you're going to end up in my office, unfortunately.
Yeah, I must say, I always thought I was an extrovert. I love all things like personality tests and Myers-Briggs and all kinds of things. Wrote my thesis on personalities, but
Awesome.
I know this. I'm not really an extrovert. I'm an extroverted introvert, and the pandemic really showed that to me. Like now, I get really like a little bit of social anxiety, like overwhelm, and sometimes don't know what to say. So either I'll just kind of stay like in the corner, or I just start power talking. So I really noticed it, and I've been curious. And my boyfriend's always like, "It's all normal. Nobody's normal at this point."
Yeah, well, what I think, whether your personality type is extrovert or introvert or somewhere in the middle, I think that the pandemic forced us to stay inside and be alone. So we kind of learned to get comfortable with that isolation. And that's the problem, is the adjustment back to, regular life, this post-pandemic life. What does that look like? Can we get back out and do the things we were before?
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because it brings me back to grad school a little bit when they talk about different cultures too, how some cultures might be more or less like anxious, ask for help, or isolated or not. And they talk about cultures that are more like multi-generational. They all kind of help each other out in communities, versus when you don't have a community and you're alone, you're isolated and you struggle more and you don't ask for help and that kind of things. Have you noticed that too? Do you see a wide range of people where you notice people that have support versus people that don't have as much support?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the social network definitely plays a role. I think there's certain activities that have become more popular, some that have become less. I think, any activity you can engage in with others, even if you want to, be outside, I think that's helpful. I think the biggest thing isn't necessarily, um, well, I guess it is what we're doing, but it's also who we're doing it with, right? So,
Mm.
friends, family, feeling that sense of belonging, feeling appreciated, like you're part of a group,
Well,
I
you're
think
not
is
from here either, so you moved from like a bigger city to the smaller town, but you also found an activity that you like doing. So, ever since you started playing pickleball a while ago, right? Have you
yes.
noticed a difference since starting that? Do you see like the same kind of people and just going out for yourself that made a difference?
Yeah, sure. So it's really funny because I was talking to my father one day and he mentioned pickleball. And I had known what it was, but I didn't realize it was growing in the way it is right now. And I was like, you know what? It sounds interesting. And then by chance, I was with one of my friends, actually over on the other side of Florida. And he said, "You want to go play some pickleball for a little bit?" This is actually the best man at my wedding. And I'm like, and I say, okay. And so we go, and it was a great time. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna buy a cheap beginner paddle and get out there. There's a beautiful park with some courts in this area, and it's really a community. I see a bunch of the same people. I've even, socialized with some of the people I've met outside of the off the pickleball ball courts. So, yeah, made some friends. It's a community.
It's so funny because my boyfriend Everett said yesterday, I think we stay super busy. So he started stand up comedy back up. So he has a regular job in retail, and it just sucks out there, especially since the pandemic as well. Like being a manager,
Right.
working with people, and then me being an artist and trying to do what I do, and sometimes auditions don't come in, and then I kind of get depressed, I feel down, or I don't get the thing that I was really hoping to do, or I thought I was doing well. But now I've been doing kung fu twice a week for over half a year, and recently started stunt training. So 4 days a week. The last few weeks, I've been so busy. I had no time to think about being depressed or not getting auditions or anything. And not just the staying busy part, but also for the first time having a sense of community because I've like these people that I go to come through with. There's like a father and a daughter, and they just actually came to my son's birthday, like with the mom and stuff, and we were all just hanging out, so getting friendships, and then in stunt class, finally meeting other actors that live in my area, and now we're just back and forth communicating, and it's it's so much nicer than when you're trying to do it all by yourself. You're just doing the regular grind every
Right.
day.
Right.
But you
Yeah.
mentioned psychotherapy, that's what you do. Is that like something specific for people, that are not familiar that you said instead of just saying therapy, that's psychotherapy?
Yeah, so I think what makes therapy different than maybe talking to a friend or a family member is we are trained in communication, formally in different techniques and practices, ways of reframing thoughts, or even reframing emotions. And I think bringing that skill into the conversation, I think really differentiate it differentiates it from like a friend to friend conversation that might be a little more casual. I think the other big piece to it is the confidentiality, right? We're bound by law to be confidential, and we're, ethically obligated to be a neutral third party. And I feel like people need that sometimes, and that might not be something a friend or a family member can always provide. Um, yeah, so I think those are really big factors that contribute.
I can see that, especially not always wanting to put the pressure on your loved ones, always kind of negative.
Right.
Some people might not understand it, and some people might be like, "Oh yeah, f this person." And that might not be the thing you should hear right now. So yeah, I think people know when they go to certain people like, oh, I want to complain about someone. I'll go to this person because this person loves to gossip with me, and then
Right.
kind of cheers me up, and I don't maybe not hear the hard truths. Some of the things. I have a good handful of friends. It might be because we're German, so we're more like smack in the face, honest with some things. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm gonna say this to my friend, and I know she's gonna tell me the hard truth. I was like, yeah,
Right.
I
And
also
then
learned
there's
of
others.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and then there's others where it circles around, and you don't get that same anonymity, confidentiality.
very true. So I think that is also one of the parts. Sometimes you may not tell someone something because you feel like they don't know. But yeah, I mean, tons of aspects of what you said. Their techniques. You went to school all your life, basically, to like learn these things, learn how to
Right.
deal with special circumstances, and with time comes also that experience. So
Lots of school, lots and lots of school. So that's definitely a difference as well.
so as I mentioned, everything's supposed to be talking about that. Is there anything that you specifically notice that you tend to? This is wrong. Tend to tell people it's an easy start. It can be slow steps down. It's time when we want to ask people like we need to skip this. We're struggling with money, and then you just don't know where to start. Is there something you noticed that you probably tell people?
Yeah, I think there's actually a few things, and I think that's actually a really great question. Um, One of the first things I usually start with in therapy, so I'm big on homework, right? Things I can send someone home with because we're in the office an hour if we're lucky, maybe two a week, and there's a lot of other hours in the day. So I if you're not working on yourself at home, then I'm not sure I could help within the bounds of the 1 hour every week. So I usually send people home with something to work on. And one of the first things I do is I ask them what they value. Not to be uh, confused with a goal, which I think is more future oriented, right? Value, I'm thinking of morals at your core, what's most important to you. Because now I know who you are as a person a little better, and I know what things I have to work with to help motivate you throughout our work together.
That's so interesting because goal setting seems to be the thing that's also something fast, like that. But it's a loaded question. Are most people stuff like that when you ask them what they thought? Is that one of those homeworks that they have to kind of pick up?
So I'll usually give them the week for that reason because it's not something people, well, I find from my experience seeing so many people, they don't think about that often, right? I guess it's really easy to be caught up with the grind of the day to day. And I feel like sometimes people don't take a second to kind of just reflect on who they are and where they are and what they're doing. Um, so that's why I usually give them the week to think about it before our next session. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll get the person that right off the bat they have an answer for me, and that's good too. But I'd say that's more rare.
And if somebody struggles with really getting to the core of what their values are, what is something that you would have to ask yourself if that's something you hadn't really thought about, or it might have changed over the years and you might have not noticed?
So I think the question is why. I think it's okay, I'm maybe working every day, maybe I live at home and I have a family, maybe I have children. So why do I work every day? Why am I raising this family? What am I trying to accomplish? What's within me that is motivating me in my circumstances? And it could be the security of having a family or the stability of having a family, or it could be the pursuit of a better life, the desire, the desire for more, or the desire just
Mm-hmm.
to even be comfortable. And so I'll usually break it down with them when they do come back and say something like family, because there's usually something underneath that. Okay, you value your family, but why? What is it about family do you value? Is it the stability and the safety of a family? Is it the belonging or the purpose? So there's a lot of motivators that someone uh, might have underneath where they're telling me they value family.
Well, that's a really good point because a lot of people will probably say that, but we all might want that for different reasons. Some people just might not like
Right,
being alone. Maybe do you
exactly.
do you then a lot of times go back to find out why it's their why, or is that not important in the kind of therapy you do usually like to get to the values, or do you kind of have to dig deeper? Is that something you might go in later?
Well, yeah, and that's why I think this is such a good question because I think it's a conversation starter, and given someone's background, it might be highly relevant. Maybe this is someone who had an upbringing where they didn't have anyone, and now the family and the connection is so important to them, it becomes part of their identity. That's how they identify. So, yeah, I think to answer your question, sometimes it's highly relevant and a big, big talking point for future sessions.
Yeah, I can totally see that. That it can open so many things. Well, there are so many different professions and areas where this why comes up all the time. And actually, in Kung Fu, I see through the teacher was saying too, as we grow up to be adults, we tend to not ask why questions as much anymore. As kids, we're always like, why is the sky blue? Why are we doing this? Why is that? And we lose that kind of curiosity. And I always say, I found mine a few years ago. I've always been curious. I love to learn, but I can probably be as annoying as a 5 year old sometimes. Like even like Dr. Longo, this neuropsychologist we work with, I'm always like, why so and so? And it's like, you can tell me if I'm annoying because I know I'm like a 5 year old at this point. But I'm keeping him like on point. I was like, you will never forget any of the things you learned in school because I will ask, why are
And the
we doing this?
curiosity is great. I think the curiosity to learn is great.
Yeah, and I think it's that when you brought that up, I feel like it's important because we lose that inner child. I can say for sure, if I look back, multiple moments in my life where I lost my inner child. My dream to be an engineer, I was going to do something, but then in seventh grade, they like, you got to figure out what guidance counselors in school, and you got to figure it out. That was the thing I was good at. So I'm trying to figure out new things. Adult, how to make money, how to do this. Then I used to wear a lot of like shoes, like cosplay, and then my son has like, all right, that mom, so being an adult now, so throw out all my cool shirts. You gotta be an adult. And really lose myself along the way of just trying to adult. And then in my 30s, I think that was strange. That I started so started like trying to figure out. But in my 30s, I was
Right.
like, I have it. I am who I am. Take me as I am. I am weird, and I'm totally cool with that.
Embrace the weird.
Embrace the weird. And it really doesn't matter what you do. If you're curious and then your child out, figure out what dream might have died as an adult that you can pick up. So you're never too old to do anything. Like
Right.
my worker ever,
Agree.
he's 10 years old. So and he just started back up with stand up comedy. He started a few years ago before the pandemic, and I lost it. I'm always like pushing him. His regular job is 50 ever, always. I was like, you have so much time. I work with old people a lot of time. They're like in the 80s, 90s. I'm like, if you retire, you have a whole lifetime left. You know what I mean? If you retire at 65, 70, but you make it till
Right.
like 90 something, that's a whole nother lifetime. So when we stress out, especially as millennials, probably, um, we're like, oh my God, we gotta have all our shit together. by 30 and we got to be married and have a house, a house as millennials. But it's like we're teenagers again in our
That's a
30s.
whole nother conversation.
Gary Vee says this all the time. What are you, 40? You're still a baby. And I'm like, yeah, tell people. Yeah, we struggle. Most of us, no matter what profession you're in, we don't have enough money to live the life we want to live. Just crazy. And I went on a tangent. I went all out. But the why question is, I love that you bring it up because a lot of people have it. So the first thing you're saying is figure out why and go from there. That's
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand with other skills. So I do like to think that at least at least in my office, I think therapy is a mix of a few things. I guess mainly two. I think the talking and the processing, if there's unpacking that needs to be done and self exploration needs to be done, we have that conversation. But I also think there's another side to therapy. I think it's those tangible coping skills, those things you take home and practice and actually see yourself progress. So I think there's a, a link, a good connection that can be made between someone's values and some of the coping skills we discuss.
it's interesting because when you hear coping in these like days, a lot of times it sounds like, oh, I have to cope with something. We say a lot of times, but I know I also work with a tech company, and it's just getting really bad. And we were making layoffs. We got help for free. The company, and when I would go in, the therapist would just be like, I literally don't know what we can do anymore. It seems you got all your coping skills. And I was like, what if I don't want to cope with something? But if you're not
Yeah.
changing your environment or whatever it is that
Mm.
gives you that, you're going to have to cope with it, right? In that sense. If you can't change it, you're going to have to figure out how to cope. Is there like another nice way? I know we stop and covering such figuring out coping skills.
Yeah, I think maybe calling them, adaptive skills, ability to adapt to life stress and the day to day.
Yeah, that actually sounds really nice. So, as I'm always talking about, also being an artist, or maybe just like a person, we go through things. Maybe we also figure out our values and we're working towards them, but it gets hard. We're going through stages of change a lot of times, and sometimes
Right.
as we're going through stuff, when we notice we change, other people might notice and might get some pushback, or in ourselves, we push ourselves hard. Might not be where we want to be. For example, as an artist, again, I get a lot of the auditions, but then I don't look at it. It's quiet, then all of a sudden a lot of stuff comes along. And that could look the same for someone else in the family. If you have kids, summer break, school with all the sports, it's ups and downs and roller coasters for relationships or hormones, a thousand things. Are there any special techniques someone can use? No matter if you're very self-aware that you already know what's happening, or someone who's not aware, to deal with emotion roller coasters and regulation.
Yes, I think one of the um, adaptive skills or coping skills that I was actually thinking of is mindfulness. And I think mindfulness is a really broad term. It means a lot of different things to a
Yeah.
lot of people, but it's something that I talk about really often in therapy because I do really believe that most people can benefit from being more mindful and implementing more mindfulness practices.
It is interesting that you say that because I think it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. You just got to be more mindful, and then you see it on social media everywhere. And mindful can look different for everyone, right? So one
Right.
person might be like, "Oh, so you just got to do yoga." I don't like doing yoga. So if that's the thing I have to do to be mindful, that's not going to work. So is there
Right.
something you'd like to add to that? How can you discover a way to be more mindful for yourself?
Absolutely. So I think to answer that question, we have to kind of understand what mindfulness is and the purpose of it. Because, like you said, it gets thrown around a lot, especially on social media, and I agree with that. Um, so when I think of mindfulness, I think of a few things. I think of it as a tool to help facilitate a connection between mind and body, making sure there's an alignment there. I also view it as a centering tool, right? Something we can do to bring us to the present moment. A lot of times we're on autopilot, and it's just so easy to get caught up in either the past or the future. And so I think using it as a grounding tool to be in this moment is really one of its most powerful purposes. And I'd also say, in that sense, it can slow us down. So there's more of an active component to mindfulness. The other big piece of this is an awareness of our body, an awareness of our environment. Um, I explain it to people this way. You walk through a park, a beautiful scenic park, and you're on your phone, you have headphones in, you take your 10-minute walk and you leave. 5 minutes later, if I ask you, what were some of the sights and sounds you heard at that park? You don't know. Your headphones were in and your face was down. So now consider the alternative. 10-minute walk through this park, and I'm encouraging you to listen to the sound of the wind hit the leaves. What does that feel like? Maybe the breeze on your skin. Maybe there's some leaves on the ground that when you take a step, you hear that crunch, right? Or maybe just the smell of the air around you. That's what I'm saying when I'm bringing up increased awareness, that mindful state, really taking in the sensory aspects of your environment.
Oh, that's so interesting. I feel like that's why a lot of people probably like this piece. So satisfying. I don't remember as a kid saying that I felt like something sounds so like it was just there and feel. But it's interesting that you said the senses because
Right.
here in Africa, it's crazy. Like my first thing out with people because of the isolation and everybody was talking. They like showcase of acting. Like, this person said this is that. And I had a panic attack. I had no idea that I did, but this one girl saw it and she said, like, what are five things that you see right now?
Hmm.
Like all of that, like things. And it calmed me down so fast, I had never thought of
Right.
it. And this sounds a lot like freaking bridges on, like I go on my business break at work. I'm trying not to birds and feel the breeze. But then there's a car next to me.
Right.
But it doesn't help. Like I never did that so much. We just tune out our senses and work everything that inside of it. Well, so you're saying more mindful, which um, didn't necessarily exercise, also going outside is help with a lot of those daily successes.
Right.
And ask yourself what are your values, what's change, what do you have to ask
Right.
why, and if you help and figure it out, seek out licensed psychologists,
Absolutely.
coach, and they can work with you. So really thank you so much for giving us insight into what it is to see a therapist have to go there and try it out. And
Right.
go see Jared and cry about that. But also, yeah, it's very specific.
Yes, it can be, and I think the biggest thing is that it's a safe space, and that's what I try and create in my office. I want you to feel like you can cry if you need to cry, and maybe not every session is structured. If you're bringing something that happened in the week and it was really stressful, then we're gonna put everything else aside and process that. Maybe it's been a casual week and just not much has changed. Then maybe I'll introduce something new. So I think the key I want to work together with my patients to create this process of therapy. I don't want you to come in and then I'm just like, okay, we're doing ABC today because it doesn't feel authentic to
It's
me. I just
beautiful to really look at the patient for them to have a direct plan.
right, right.
That's a lot of people go to the doctor and things like that. You tell them how to take it. That's something goes to the doctor. Look at the person today.
Right, and I think that's something you have to do with mental health. It's not like a broken leg where you go in, they put a cast on 6 to 8 weeks, you come back and they take the cast off and you're on your way. It's so different with mental health because two people can be coming in with anxiety and it looks so different. I mean, treatment with them cannot always all be the same. It's really you have to consider the individual person a lot more. I would say not to bash any medical profession, but it's just a different context. It's really a different lens.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you to explain. It's really awesome. Fine. I think one last thing that shows sometimes you might get something out of this. It's not wrong, right? It's not right. So
Right.
when you go see someone, it's not good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you once again, and thanks for tuning
Thank you.